So this connects to the next topic that we want to get into here, which is reports that HHS may radically change the current U.S. vaccine schedule to align more with
It's
Denmark's
not May.
schedule.
It's not May.
Pardon?
It's not a May statement. It's a will statement. It's a question of when.
Okay.
Uh,
And I
yeah,
heard
so that
some reports saying that
that
this would be in 2026 at some point in the
yep,
next couple months.
probably Q1.
Yep.
Uh,
And
this is a presidential directive to the secretary. Okay, so Trump, in almost immediately after this ACIP vote that has resulted in a tiny incremental change in the hepatitis B schedule. I mean, the amount of drama
yeah,
around this
yeah,
compared to the nature of the change is enormously disproportionate. But
correct.
the president issued a proclamation to the secretary that he wished the entire childhood vaccine schedule uh, restructured, and I think specifically called out the Danish schedule, and also, as I recall, Japan and was it Germany as other exemplars that should be considered by HHS as it considers restructuring the childhood vaccine schedule. And because it's coming as a presidential directive to the secretary, uh, then the ACIP doesn't really have technically a role in that. The ACIP is only advisory. ACIP does not set policy.
Yeah,
Policy must be set by political appointees or elected officials, and that's the way it should be. Then they're the ones that can be held accountable, and not appointed committees. So policy is set by, in this case, typically the director of the CDC, and the ACIP serves as an advisor to the director of the CDC. But now we have the president stepping in directly telling the Secretary of Health that he wants the Secretary of Health to get it done. I think this is a red-green moment for HHS. Get her done, and to use a Canadian analogy, and is telling the president is telling the secretary to do this thing, to do it promptly, and so the decision is that there really isn't a need for advisory from ACIP. This is being done at an executive level. And so the decision about how to reorganize the vaccine schedule is going to be handled at a higher level in essentially at the executive level within HHS. And Secretary Kennedy and his associates will make whatever decisions they deem appropriate to comply with the president's orders. And they'll seek whatever advice they need to seek. They don't need to go to a independent advisory board. They have plenty of talent within FDA, CDC, NIH, et cetera, to draw on to make informed decisions about restructuring the schedule, and that's what they're going to do.
I have a couple of questions about this for you. First of all, w- what do you think is the rationale for trying to shift the U.S. vaccine schedule to align with Denmark's or other related countries? Like, what's special about Denmark's vaccine schedule?
Well, all of the so the observation is that, and so to roll it back, Tracy Beth Hogue, who is
Friend of the show.
currently the acting director of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and happens to also have been a key player in a lot of the epidemiology that was done, for instance, for the state of Florida under Joe Latipo. in evaluating data relating to the COVID vaccine products and COVID in general. So Tracy is well trained. And by the way, one of those that have trained her so rigorously is a key ACIP member, my colleague, Dr. Retzef Levy. So Tracy is hardcore. She does her job. She's not influenced by political considerations. She's not a partisan. She is not an
Yep.
anti-vaxxer. She's just a straightforward, get the job done, hardcore medical epidemiologist.
Yeah, and just for a bit of context, just to interrupt for a second, she's been on the podcast multiple times, including one time I had her debate Dr. Denis Rancourt
Ah,
on his paper on the COVID vaccine having
yeah.
killed, I forget what the
Should have
exact number
watched
was,
that. That
but
would have been,
millions of COVID deaths. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
that would have been fun.
Yeah. So,
So
so
I know Denny
she took the
and Denny.
stance that there wasn't enough evidence to say that the COVID vaccine had taken as many millions of lives. I forget what the exact number was that Denis claimed. So there she was being attacked by the more anti-vax crowd. So she's a very fair and objective person.
Yeah, she is absolutely. She's rigorous. And so, by the way, she's the one that initiated the review
Mhm.
of the pediatric deaths reported in VAERS that resulted in the reveal of at least 10 cases that are rigorously associated with the receipt of the vaccine product
Yep.
that has triggered so much consternation.
Hmm.
So Tracy, I don't know if it was discussed on your podcast, but Tracy is an interesting person in that she had her child, and she comes from Denmark, so she understands the vaccine schedule in Denmark quite personally, as well as the American vaccine schedule. And she provided at the recent ACIP meeting a presentation in which she just did a straightforward comparison of A versus B. I infer that the president saw that based on his comments. And I think that's part of why the Danish schedule is called out in the president's directive. But he also, as I mentioned, listed Japanese and, as I recall, German. So I think that was part of why that was called out. The Danish schedule is quite minimalist compared to the American schedule, and yet there is no um, significant difference in incidence of things like influenza deaths or hepatitis B
Yeah,
in
and
Denmark.
just you mentioned minimalist. For people who don't know, the U.S. recommends 72 childhood vaccines for 18 diseases, whereas Denmark only recommends 11 for 10 diseases.
And those are, we're listing, just to be clear, I think you're listing the number of doses of vaccine
Yeah.
typically administered, not the number of separate vaccines. That's often kind of missed in the language that's used. But
Yeah.
yes, this is
So
true.
72 to 11, that's a massive disparity.
Huge. And one of the outstanding issues is whether or not, in particular, the repeated administration of childhood vaccines, these are typically killed or subunit vaccines, that include the adjuvant of aluminum salts, typically referred to as alum, that are in individual vaccines, the dose of aluminum salts is required to be below a certain threshold that is known to be toxic. So aluminum salts are toxic, like many things, at a too high a dose, and they have a fairly narrow what's called therapeutic window. So you can easily overdose a child on aluminum salts, and there are various research that demonstrate that, particularly in animal models, that dosing with aluminum salts can cause, among other things, neurotoxicity. Neurotoxicity is a surrogate for, among other things, autism in terms of language. So the issue there is, well, it may be that dosing with vaccine X at dose Y doesn't cause aluminum salt toxicity, but you're using the same basic adjuvant product, these aluminum salts, in multiple vaccines, and no one has looked at rigorously the combined effect of all these vaccines and the aluminum salt dose, and that has been tallied up, and a strong case can be made that the combined dose of aluminum salts, when you receive all these doses, exceeds the allowable thresholds for toxicity. So, why in a environment in which we clearly have a unacceptable incidence of chronic diseases, including neurologic diseases of children, and these seem to track back to approximately the time when the vaccine schedule exploded in the United States, concurrent with the liability protection that was provided to the manufacturers. There's a circumstantial coincidence between these various symptoms and the rise of certain chronic diseases of childhood, including neurologic diseases. And so the logic is, well, what's been said is, well, we don't have any definitive evidence that there's a cause and effect. But what was clearly documented in the ACIP meeting the other day was that it's kind of like almost an intentional absence of evidence is what it appears. There's a strange lack of definitive studies on toxicities associated with these various vaccine products. And so to say that, well, there's no data that shows that it's harmful is a little disingenuous, because there's almost no data on whether it is or isn't harmful. And so to say the absence of data means that there is an absence of toxicity is disingenuous. The absence of data is the absence of data. And we don't know whether, if we didn't have that absence of data, whether it would show the safety that is so loudly proclaimed by various medical guilds or in the pharmaceutical industry, or would it be that if we actually had rigorous data, we would see something different? And it's a rather odd failure of the CDC to gather these data after decades, given all the pressure that's been put on the CDC, including by Congress, to get those data. So CDC seems to be kind of willfully ignorant in terms of the documentation about vaccine harms or lack thereof. And so the assertion has been, well, we don't have the data, so therefore we have to assume that it's safe, but it's just as easy to assume that it's not safe. And usually when we're thinking about the principle of maleficence and the guidance to do no harm, that the assumption is usually made to protect the patient and err on the side of caution when you don't have enough data to make a clear decision about safety.